How are you today? I'm hoping that you're joining us from a comfortable place. We have a great show today featuring the executive director of Sant, and I wanted her to introduce herself and get to know the organization. We're going to begin quickly because we want to make the most of this time. Thamara, tell me about yourself and the organization.
Sure. Good afternoon, Miami. Thank you, Oscar, for having me. My name is Thamara Labrousse, and I am the Executive Director of Sant, the Haitian Neighborhood Center. I joined the organization in January, so this is a relatively new post for me, although I've been engaged with the organization for close to 25 years. I was on the board for a number of years, probably closer to 10. So Sant is a social service organization started 25 years ago, and primarily to meet the needs of the Haitian community. We're located in North Miami. We don't work exclusively, but primarily with Haitian immigrants. And at our core, our mission is to really help Haitian families, Haitian individuals to have access to the resources, the support, the information, and the services they need in order to thrive.
So one of the great things about Sant is that I've been familiar with the organization and its importance and role in the community. And now more than ever, it's playing a pivotal role in helping Haitians who are trapped in this cycle of fear and really, in some cases, home incarceration that they put themselves through, because the alternative is that they could be picked up by ICE after temporary protected status for Haitians and other minorities in Miami, and the country was eliminated. Can you talk a little about how Sant is engaging some of these people and some of the needs that are being communicated to you in Miami right now?
Sure. So Sant, for the past 26 years, have been engaged in our community. Our job is to really figure out how to best respond. And so immigration and immigration-related issues have always been a core pillar within the organization. And that over the last 26 years have played out in a number of different ways. As you mentioned, the latest thing that we've been dealing with and that have really, taken up quite a bit of our resources and is the TPS, right? Temporary Protective Status for Haitians. For folks who don't understand what that is, across the country, there's about 500,000 people who entered into the United States under this protective status that got legal access into the United States. Mm-hmm. And so in July 27th, the current administration terminated TPS for these individuals.
For Haitians.
For Haitians,
right.
Not just Haitians, but we're talking specifically about Haitians, Venezuelans, Cubans, Hondurans. Yep. Mm-hmm. So we're not the only immigrant group that's being impacted, but obviously, our primary focus at Sant is the Haitian community, but we do serve other immigrant groups as well, so mm-hmm. not exclusively. Mm-hmm. So this temporary status was terminated. And so what that essentially means is that folks who had legal status and legal ability to stay in the United States lost that legal status. Within that, they also lost their work authorization. Mm-hmm. So with your TPS came your work authorization. So these folks, and that's about 125,000 people in the state of Florida, they didn't just lose their legal status to be in the country, but they lost their work authorization. So many of them, most of them, if not all of them, have then lost their jobs and their abilities to earn a living, to take care of their families, and to be able to sustain themselves. So this whole thing started, earlier in the year. There had been a lot of, sort of like speculation around it. There was a lawsuit that was filed. There had been a couple wins here and there that prolonged the decision. So in that time frame, our community was just living, with this question of what was going to happen. There was a lot of fear, and anxiety around the whole thing. And so now, we're seeing this play out.
And there was a story in the Herald today. Jackie Charles, who's a treasure to this mm-hmm. country and our community, who's been reporting from Haiti and about Haiti for many years. She reported that ICE sent the second deportation flight to Haiti in a week, mm-hmm. and there were kids aboard. Now, think about the circumstances. The last flight had 166 people on it.
Correct.
They're going to Cap Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
And explain the difference between different regions of Haiti, because people just think they're going to the capital. But even if that were the case, it's not as though they're being dropped off in a paradise. There's a lot of conflict in Haiti. There are gangs that are extorting people. There's a lot of challenges politically, economically, environmentally, earthquakes, all different kinds of reasons, which is why Haitians were here in the first place. When they're sent to this particular place, to Cap Haitien, where is that in the country, and what does it mean exactly?
Well, the fact that folks are being flown into Cap Haitien is an indicator of the reality of what's happening in Haiti. So Port-au-Prince is the capital of Haiti, and that's where typically flights would be coming into, but because it's dangerous and flights have been suspended into Port-au-Prince, you now are using these smaller, airports to get into the country. So to your point, the current situation in Haiti, the gang violence and the dangerous, sort of atmosphere, and what was happening politically with the unstable, political environment there, and many of the other reasons, like the infrastructure not being in place, people not being able to get access to basic needs, our education system that's been, consistently interrupted, all of those reasons are the reasons why people were granted TPS to begin with. And so the sort of premise is that it was too dangerous for you to be in Haiti, so we're giving you this opportunity to come into the United States under this protective status. The conditions of TPS requires that the conditions that were used to grant you access should improve before somebody is returned, right? And in actuality, the situation in Haiti has gotten worse. And so the fact that they're flying folks into Cap Haitien, the northern part of the country, is an indicator that it's too dangerous to fly into Port-au-Prince. So the argument can easily be made, if it's too dangerous to even have flights land, how do we expect people to be able to live and to be able to get what they need and to be able to continue to take care of themselves, their families, and to be able to thrive in that environment? So that's number one. Number two is, if you're not from that region, which many of these people probably are not, you have no connection to this region where you're being dropped off. You're essentially just being dropped off and having to figure out your next step. Some of these individuals may not have family in Haiti, or they may have family that live, very far away from where they're being dropped off. They may not have the money, the resources to be able to even facilitate transportation to get somewhere. They may not, remember that the first wave of TPS holders came into the United States in 2010 during the earthquake. So
the earthquake,
right?
Exactly,
And so, and some folks had already been here, and they were transferred into under the status of TPS. So you have folks who could have been in the United States 15, 20, years, and really don't have very, very much connection to begin with. Some of these folks could potentially have never been, to Haiti, or had left there, when they were children, and don't have, necessarily the relationships, the connections, the family support to be able to reacclimate or acclimate into this country. And so you're essentially looking at a situation where you're being dropped off. You have to figure out, your next step on your own. Even what's happening on the Haiti side in terms of Haiti's government and that region's government and leadership's ability to accept these people and be able to receive them and figure out next steps with them is a big question. The whole deportation process is a big question. We're still not clear as to when deportation happens with someone who's being detained. What is the real process? So you could be detained. We know that some folks are being granted a hearing. That hearing may be resulting in a deportation order, but we don't know when that hearing happens from the time that you're detained to when you're getting deported. It's all sort of like a mystery, right? And obviously that's probably being done intentionally.
It's done intentionally, exactly,
but if that within itself also creates a great deal of fear and anxiety, just a lot of questions. And it really begs the question of whether or not folks are getting any kind of due process, right? What is the legal sort of like logistical thing that we can expect for people to go through? And what does that look like? There's just a lot of questions around that as well.
So part of what I think it's important to understand is temporary protected status means that people were here legally.
Correct.
Haitians, Venezuelans, Cubans, Hondurans, all these people were here legally. They were granted legal status, the ability to work.
Correct.
And Haitians got to work. They're in the hospitality industry, the healthcare industry. They're building our homes. They're, every day they're doing everything like everybody else is doing, trying to raise their kids, send their kids to school, make enough money to put something aside so that they can retire with some peace in their hearts, rather than constantly being in a place where war is being waged and their lives and their children's lives are threatened.
Correct.
So they were here legally. Part of that process of being here legally means that they are required in many cases to attend hearings that confirm that they are doing what they're supposed to do, that they're not committing crimes, that they're meeting with the proper people in local agencies to make sure that there's a constant communication, an engagement, that they are telling people exactly what's happening. And what's happening now as a result of this change is that federal agents, state agents, local agents are actually picking up Haitians at their hearings because their status is gone. So they're adhering to the law. They're going to the meetings that they're supposed to go to. They're being, upright citizens who are meeting all of the requirements that the country told them they needed to meet. And then they're being picked up, put in a jail cell, and then being sent back. And the thing I think that is most tragic about all this, we were talking about this a few minutes ago, is that the latest plane load that just left for Haiti has children on it. Now, think about it in two ways. Would you rather have the child stay here potentially with no one in their family because their parents were sent back? Or would you rather have them go on a plane to a place that is full of violence every day, that is so violent that they can't even land in the capital city? So we have a tragic situation that's been building for some time here, and now it's coming to full attention, and we as a community need to come together and change this path. Why do we say that? Because there are people who at this point have no other choice but to stay in their homes, not go to work, not send their kids to public school in some cases, because they fear that the kids are going to get picked up, that they're going to get picked up. I've heard this story where one family member who has some kind of status that won't get them under scrutiny will be the one that goes to get the food, that goes to do the laundry, whatever it is that needs to be done outside the house. And then they return and, basically become a facilitator to their own family that was here living, contributing to the community. Can you talk a little about that? How some Haitians in this community now are locked behind closed doors because they feel they have no other choice.
Yeah, there's so much there, Oscar, in terms of what you've just mentioned. There's no question that the large majority of Haitian people are, law-abiding, productive, kind, folks who are just trying to make a living, take care of their families, make a contribution. Haitians, at our very core, we're hardworking people. We have great work ethic. And so these folks have been in the work, environment for many, many years across a number of different sectors, in the hospital, healthcare sector, hospitality, construction, you name it. They're building our homes. They're taking care of our children and our elders. They're just in every single place. And they're a huge part of the economic fabric, of our country and our South Florida community. And so, so these folks, what we're seeing is that since the termination of TPS went into effect, it's just sort of like gotten quiet, right? And so folks are hiding out, they're staying under the radar. They're sort of like getting off the grid and figuring out, how to stay safe and isolating. And so how that's being played out is, number one, just thinking about what the psychological and emotional sort of like aspect of that, living like that is, and how that takes a toll on folks. But, if you've gone from, having a job, having, being able to go to church, having, ability to hang out with friends and be social, being able to move around freely, to now not being able to do that and being completely isolated is a very tragic, and challenging sort of like scenario. In addition to that is folks are not seeking the help and the assistance and the services that they need as a result of that, right? And so how that's playing out is that if something happens in the home, they're not calling the police. Even if, for example, a woman might be battered, she's not calling the police. If they have lost their jobs and they don't have, access to food, they're not getting, access to food because they're not seeking services. If there's a healthcare issue, whether it's a pending or some kind of chronic illness that needs to be managed, appointments that need to be followed up on, they're not going to the doctor. To your point, they're not sending their kids to school. I think just yesterday in the Miami Herald, it was mentioned that like 15,000 children didn't show up for the new school year, right? So they're not enrolled. And for the first time, because there's been a little bit of a trend where the public school system have been losing children to the charter schools, right? But even the charter schools are seeing this lower enrollment. So they're not sending their kids to school. And so these kids are now, being held in a very, challenging and isolated area circumstance, and they're not, getting the education, right?
That's right.
And so we're very concerned about that as well as Sant. We've had a number of conversations about, we knew that we sort of like predicted this might happen because we were hearing from parents going into the end of the summer that they were afraid that they were going to do that. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we do at Sant with many of our partners is we do a book fair drive to help parents get, what they need to get the kids ready for school.
Backpacks.
Backpacks, school supplies, notebooks, everything.
Everybody does that. Yes.
Many of our parents didn't show up for that this year. That's the difference, compared to previous years. And so when we contacted our parents, we're like, hey, what's going on? And they were like, well, I'm afraid, whatever the case may be. So we facilitated a process where we were delivering these supplies to the parents, encouraging them and making sure that they had what they needed in the hopes that they would be, in a position for these kids to go back to school. So now we're trying to figure out what is the response, right? Because something that could happen in that circumstance is that these kids could enroll in virtual school. That is an option within Miami-Dade County Public Schools, but many parents may not know that. They may not know that that's an option. They may not have a computer. They may not have the resources. They may not know how to do that. So as a community, we're part of a coalition of many, many other organizations, not just Sant, to try to figure out a response, work in collaboration with the school system to support, this transition. But, just even knowing that you could enroll your child in virtual school is one of the things that we're talking about. But yes, so we're seeing this sort of like quiet. We're seeing people go under the radar. We're seeing folks not seeking the assistance that they need. I'll give you another really quick example. We got a call just the other day from someone who was literally starving. And when we sort of like digged a little deeper, we're like, what took you so long to call us? And they were like, I didn't know what to do. So folks are also sort of like paralyzed in fear, and that is sort of like dictating what their action or inaction is. And so it's just really, really a challenging time for our community.
It's challenging. And as a community, I mean, we like to call ourselves a gateway to the Americas.
Correct.
Or the gateway of the Americas, because it goes both ways. And here we are, major portions of our community DNA are being ripped out from under us. And this is a community that has built a reputation around the world as an inviting place where people from all over the world vacation here, now have invested here, buying homes, building their businesses, and all of that. The infrastructure for that, making it possible, is because we have such a vital immigrant population that has assimilated here, become part of our community over many, many years, and are integral to how we make money in this town, how our economy works. So to eliminate this entire population is going to debilitate our ability to operate as businesses. Business is such an important concern for a lot of voters, thinking about who they vote for. Well, if your policy is undercutting business, in this case, homegrown business, small business, the ability of small business to feed their kids and serve their customers, well, then what are we doing exactly? For example, Chef Creole, we were just talking about that. The Herald reported on that, a lot of different TV stations as well, that Chef Creole voted for this policy, and a bunch of his workers are now gone. And Chef Creole is a local brand that has been very successful, a bunch of locations, very interesting entrepreneurial guy, a lot to be proud of. And here he's looking at a situation and realizing these are anti-business policies. These are policies that are not only anti-immigrant, anti-community, anti-citizen, but also anti-business. Yeah. And as a result of that, you have people staying home. They're saying, I'm not sending my child to school. When I was a kid, I loved going to school. Maybe I'm one of the few. I loved it. It was a place of community, right? It was so fun. Yeah. You got a new backpack, new school supplies. New shoes. Yeah, back then it was Sears where we went to. We went to Sears and we bought all this stuff, and we were so excited. Every year it was fantastic. And to hear that children now are so scared, and their parents are so scared, that they have to tell their child, have a conversation with their child, I cannot send you to school, because if I do, you may not come back, or I might not be here when you get back. Right. What a horror story this is for Americans, people that have been here, that have built our community, that are contributing to our community, that are our neighbors, our friends, the people who take care of our aunties, our grandmothers, that offer childcare, that are building businesses of their own, that are feeding us, that are our friends and neighbors, our relatives. This is not acceptable. This is not acceptable for a community of immigrants like Miami, like Florida as a whole. This is what this state is all about. And think about this also. We were just talking about maybe there's a need to have virtual school for some of these kids who would not be able to go because their parents are scared if they get picked up or something worse might happen. During COVID, there was a huge backlash, and rightly, to the idea that kids should not be taught virtually, right? Because they lose the ability to socialize with their friends. They lose the ability to have more person-to-person education, which showed up in statistics that had kids having issues with keeping up with math, science, reading, all these things after the fact, right? Now we're creating an environment where the only choice these parents have is to potentially get a computer, if they don't already have one, set up in a relationship with the school, which hopefully won't out them if they have their kid on virtual class, and then put them into that situation, which all these people in Florida and around the country said was horrible. So we're inflicting this on children who are going to be dealing with this trauma their entire lives. Talk a little about why this is so urgent, this need to deal with this, and how we can deal with this issue. There's a bill I know you were talking about, which is being put together in Congress that could help address some of these issues. First, if you could talk about the impact on children, the trauma, and then how we can move forward and maybe try to address this.
Sure. So again, we're seeing, the psychological and emotional impact of these kids having been, uncertain up to the July termination of what was going to happen. So now this is happening, and so that uncertainty and that fear has just gotten a lot worse. In our family counseling programs, we've been seeing, this influx. And kids just really not knowing what to do, not knowing how to deal with the situation, not knowing, what's going to happen from one day to the next. One of the best things that you can offer any child is a sense of stability. Right. We know that as adults and as parents and as caretakers. So imagine just having that completely destroyed and sort of like ripped, away from you. And so that just living in that state of being and trying to figure out what's going to happen, being constantly afraid that you're going to be separated from your family, from your mom, from your dad.
Right.
No child should have to live like that.
Right.
And no child really is equipped to be able to live with that and be able to do okay living like that, right? Let's just be clear about that. And so that's one aspect of it. And I think parents too don't know what to do. They don't know how to have the conversation with their child, particularly if you're talking about younger children and trying to figure out the language, without maybe making it worse or creating, unnecessary, fear, or trying to protect your child. So even like sitting down as a family and having a real conversation and sort of like preparing them for what could happen, is something that a lot of parents are struggling with. And kids are exposed to so much information, right? Whether it's through their friends or on social media and other aspects of how they get news. So they're speculating and sort of like coming up with their own, in their heads, coming up with their own scenarios of what could happen, right? And oftentimes when you're scared and you're anxious, that's like the worst case scenario. So that just sort of like adds and builds onto, this sense of turmoil. So that's one thing. The other thing is with the school aspect is our position is if a parent is afraid to send their child to school, at minimum, they should enroll them in virtual school.
Sure.
I agree with you. We know what, the statistics were there from COVID. In our communities in particular, children did not necessarily do well.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? And you've mentioned some of them already, but a lot of them have to do with the fact that they don't have enough, sort of like support at home to be able to, to thrive academically. And so at Sant and with our partners, we're even having conversations about, well, if we have a number of children now enroll in virtual school, how can we support them, right? We're talking to retired teachers who maybe want to come out of retirement and volunteer and creating like these hubs where teachers are available to provide additional support to tutor and things of that nature.
Fantastic.
And so as a community, I think that's just one example of how these are unprecedented times, and we have to get creative and we have to get innovative, because we're going to see more and more the sort of consequence of what this TPS termination is. And so as a community, we're going to have to be a lot more creative in terms of how we respond. So that's just one example of, sort of like the planning and what's happening with Sant. We have this LACU initiative, which is all about we've started this months ago in terms of how do we plan and how do we prepare ourselves as providers, service providers, as, individuals in the community who are concerned, in school system, healthcare providers, everyone, how do we prepare for this? And so now it's like, how do we operationalize some of these ideas? How do we identify emerging needs? Because they're changing every single day. We thought that immediately after the TPS law went into, the termination of TPS went into effect, we would see this influx. But because people have gone under, it's a little bit more quiet.
That's right.
So we know that there's a few things happening, right? Some folks maybe had a little bit of reserve, so they're living off of that, but that is short-lived. And so that's, we're going to see. It's going to run out. It's going to run out. And so what happens in a month, what happens in 3 months, some folks maybe have family support and they're relying on that. Maybe they have friends. Churches are stepping up and putting in place, safety nets and things of that nature.
Right.
But, you might have an opportunity to live, I don't know, with a cousin, but then, a month later, that cousin is looking at you. Maybe they were empathetic a month before, but now they're looking at you like, Like, how long are you going to be here? You know, so it's just going to continue to evolve and to escalate. We know that. Yeah. And so part of it is, as a community, how do we prepare? I also wanted to mention, you know, to your point about the businesses, I think, you know, we saw what happened with Chef Creole, what is happening with Chef Creole, but that's just one example. Right. You know, when you drive up and down, you know, like, let's say West Dixie Highway, which is in North Miami, which is, you know, which is sort of like just this melting pot of so many different types of businesses, and such a vibrant part of North Miami are these Haitian businesses. Yes. That's also very quiet. Sure. You know, not just because in some instances maybe the business owner was a TPS holder, but the folks who support that business, their customer base, and the folks who go in and out of those businesses who are TPS holders, who are now not circulating in our economy, not circulating in our community, are not supporting those businesses, you know? So like, it's just very layered. Yeah. And I think when you sort of think about all of those things, I think there was just so very little thought given to what the consequence of such a policy would look like, right?
Well, I think there was thought put into the immediate consequence, meaning there was an intent. The intent was to get rid of people who didn't meet the visual or background requirement of the people making these policies, that didn't look like them, that spoke a different language, that came from somewhere else, even though they came from somewhere else or their family came from somewhere else. Yeah. But you know, there's a lot of people out there who think, I made it, so I have to lock this person out. Yeah. I can win, but that person has to lose. Right. And in this community, I had written something because I was imagining before the courts made decisions about how TPS was going to be implemented, or the lack of TPS rather. And I imagined that there were going to be ICE agents flowing into Little Haiti, and it was going to be a disaster. Part of what I've learned, and I hope that other people will learn, is that part of the story that we're thinking about and talking about and dealing with every day is that there are a lot of Haitians who live outside of Little Haiti. Little Haiti actually has maybe the smallest concentration of Haitians today. So where this is happening is in your neighborhood, in North Miami or in South Dade, places that you know every day. It's not somewhere else. It's not in a pocket called Little Haiti. It's actually happening everywhere in a very quiet kind of way. And oftentimes, again, it's happening in the courtrooms or outside the courthouse because they're being picked up right there as they're making their way from trying to meet their legal requirements. So in terms of how we see the future, part of the reason why we're here today is because there was such a thing as TPS, that there was a need for that. Why is that? Because in America, we haven't dealt with immigration like Reagan tried to do, where he said, you know, we're going to have a pathway to citizenship, you know, and was pragmatic about the need and the value that immigrants bring to this country. He understood that how this country grew is by having a pathway to citizenship, not ejecting people. The reason why we have such an amazing technological, innovative environment in this country is because we've welcomed all these people to our universities who now have become the entrepreneurs that are building these incredible companies that can compete and beat all the other countries of the world. And we're telling these people, guess what? Those days are over. Those days when you thought you could leave a place that was chaotic and miserable, and you know, where people were being picked up with strangers with masks into unmarked cars in those countries somewhere else. Now that's happening here. We're telling these people, don't come here, stay in your country or go somewhere else. Go to China, and they're going to make the innovations that we should have been making, right? So we have to deal with this issue head on. There can be no more TPS because it's over. Those days are over. We have to deal with a reasonable immigration policy that will allow people from other countries to immigrate here, to be a part of this country the way they expected, that they're not going to be torn out by the roots and thrown out like they're garbage when they helped make this country what it is today. From its founding to today, There have been immigrants here. We were immigrants. This country is full of immigrants. The people who came here at the beginning, there were native Indians here. They came here as immigrants. And now they want the immigrants out. It makes absolutely no sense. It's such a rejection of our heritage, of everything about us. However, there are people in this country right now who want to change the policy in a way that will accommodate, will invite immigrants. And what's the bill that's in Congress right now?
So the bill that we are working on is Senate Bill 4814.
Okay, 4814.
And that is the bill that would essentially extend TPS for the next 3 years.
Okay.
The thinking is that if we can sort of like extend it long enough beyond this particular administration,
right,
then there could potentially be opportunities to do exactly what you've described, which is figure out, pathways to citizenship and figure out how to address immigration in a way that is rooted in dignity and fair practices, which it hasn't been, particularly when you look at immigrants that are brown and black. Brown and black immigrants, are being treated very differently than others. And so we really, are hoping that the bill, would do that. The issue with the bill, though, is that it needs bipartisan support.
Right.
So we need folks to stand in solidarity with the Haitian community and other immigrant groups that are impacted and vote for this bill. And it's just been a very slow, painful process. The traction just hasn't been there. The support just hasn't been there. And, we know why, right? There's a lot of reasons as to why that's not happening. One of the things that I want to just address is something that you just said in terms of like what immigrants historically have brought into our nation and the valuing of what they bring. And so I think that one of the challenges is that the current administration do not in fact value, immigration and immigrants and what they bring to the table. And I think, just speaking specifically about the Haitian community, I think the Haitian community in particular, have been devalued.
That's right.
In terms of what they bring to the table. And so that's a reality that, oftentimes we don't want to talk about,
right.
Just how unfair and how, there's just a lot of nuances around how certain policies are applied for certain groups based on how they look and what countries they're from. And so so there's all of that. But we're concerned about this bill because we just haven't been able to get, the support that we need. Beyond that, I think what's really is important is not really having a clear sense of how this whole thing is going to play out. Even the how they're operationalizing the termination of TPS, we don't know and didn't know that those two planes were going to land in Haiti until they landed. Right. So even that I think is very concerning because there should be transparency,
sure,
and clarity and understanding of what someone who is who had TPS, who is going to be deported, what that process is, so that they have a sense of expectation,
sure,
in terms of what it is going to be, what time frame, what happens when they land in Haiti. Like there should be really, dignified, clear, transparent, process. And we
so
don't
you can plan for it.
Yeah. So
right. If there's family in Haiti that some of the individuals have or are going back, they should be aware and they should be able to meet with those people immediately rather than just being dropped off like, a bag of dirty clothes. It's so unacceptable, this behavior, and it's continuing. It's not only Haitians. Understand that it's Venezuelans. There was a plane of Venezuelans that was sent back. They just had an earthquake. They just had a debilitating earthquake on a level that is still, they're still trying to pull people out from under debris and trying to figure out what happened there. It's a horror show that has occurred and it's happening in our community every day. So what are some of the resources that Haitians and other people from our community, Christians, because Haitians many of them are Christian, that they can access here in the community to help, to volunteer, to put their time in, maybe donate, to be able to help Haitians and other immigrants deal with this issue right now?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is the fear, the anxiety, and the need to sort of isolate is understandable, right? We can acknowledge that people are doing that out of necessity and trying to self-protect.
Right.
In spite of that, what we're encouraging our community to do is to seek help. Mm-hmm. There are trusted organizations like Sant. We're working within a coalition of many other organizations on some Catholic Community Services, the Haitian Lawyers Association, Haitian, so it's just there's a bunch of Haitian organizations and non-Haitian organizations out of the Jewish community, out of the African American community, that's available to serve this population. And so we're asking people, in spite of the fear, is to reach out. Reach out in the best way that you can. If you're too afraid to come out of your home, call a family member, call a church member, call a neighbor, let someone know what is going on and let them be your advocate. Let them seek assistance on your behalf, but do not act. Do not keep yourself from getting what you need, right?
Okay.
And so we're asking folks to do that. On the flip side of that, our community needs to step up. If you live next to someone and the neighbor, there's
right.
two kids in that house, every day they're out and about and you haven't seen them in 2 weeks, or 3
ask
weeks.
A question.
Ask a question, knock
That's
on
right.
that door,
right.
Be an ally, be a friend,
sure.
Sort of like extend yourself, understand that this is now what's happening in our community and it's going to take everybody, not just the institutions, not just the organizations, like people, the average neighbor, the average churchgoer, the average, used to be co-worker, they're going to need to step up and make
right.
sure that we're standing in solidarity with these folks and that we're extending ourselves to support them, emotionally, psychologically, financially, whatever the case may be. So if I were living next to a Haitian family and I haven't seen them in 3 weeks,
right.
I would be knocking on their door,
yes.
Saying, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Do you need anything?
right.
Have you been impacted by TPS? And maybe they're not super like transparent and
right.
open, but you can tell when some shift has happened.
Oh yeah.
With the folks that So we're asking the community to seek help, find someone to use to seek help through,
right.
and we're asking our community to step up to stand in solidarity
right.
and extend yourself and make sure that the folks who are being impacted, you can be a voice for them.
Yeah.
You can be a driver for them.
Right.
You can pick up some food and have it delivered.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of resources popping up, but even like how can somebody, traditionally, let's say somebody needed food, right? There's a food pantry.
Yeah.
The food pantry may still be there and have food, but they have to get to that pantry.
Right.
Pantries are not necessarily in the business of delivering food
That's right.
to hundreds of people,
That's
even
right.
though they might be in the business of providing food for hundreds of people.
Right.
Just logistically, that's not who they are.
Right.
That's not what they do, and it's impossible, right? So you may need to be someone who goes to a pantry on someone's behalf, pick
right.
up the food and deliver it to them to make sure that they have food, right?
Okay.
And so we're really asking, I think this is an opportunity for community to come together, for us to show what we know about humans, right? And
each
to
other,
tap into
our neighbors,
that, this is who
our
we
friends,
are,
yes.
And
yes.
so it is not impossible or unusual or out of the norm for us to sort of like in times of crisis. Our community is in crisis. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
There's nothing about what has happened with the termination of TPS that hasn't created impossible, challenging, very difficult, circumstances for certain segments of our community, and they're all in crisis.
Right.
So what do we do when people are in crisis? We
come
step
together.
up.
That's right.
We come together.
That's
we step up. We step in, right?
Yeah.
And so we want our community to look at this like any other time. If we had been hurt, if a certain neighborhood or a certain region of our county had been hit by a hurricane and they lost everything, we would be doing that.
Right.
We would be stepping up.
That's right.
What we do during times of crisis. We have shown that over and over again. That's who we are as human beings. And so we do that. And so do the same thing, because right now we're in crisis.
And I think
our
also
community needs people, Haitians and non-Haitians,
that's right,
to be in response and
allies.
Exactly.
And I think often I think about this because it feels a lot of the time like this is unprecedented, but it's actually, we've been here before.
Right.
Like you're saying, we've been here before. We can come back together again and figure this out together as a community and figure out how to go forward. What is a good number to reach you and the organization to get information? Because I know you were talking about also assets, right? People have bought houses, businesses, they have leases, etc. They need to be able to manage that. If they are sent out of the country, they need to talk to an attorney, someone that can help them organize that, or at least navigate how to protect that.
Yeah.
So what is a good number to reach you so that they can begin to make those contacts that are necessary?
Yeah, definitely. Santla can be reached at www.santla.org, SANTLA.org,
right.
SANTLA.org,
right.
or at 305-573-4871. Oh my God, I was going to make a point. Okay, so to your point about, assets.
Yes,
right? We're looking for volunteers. When we talk about our community stepping up and stepping in, we're looking at that like very broadly.
Sure.
So for example, if you are an attorney, right, whether you are an estate planner sort of attorney or you are in family law, we're looking for volunteers to work with families, to put in place, the perimeters to protect their assets, to put in place, for example, a power of attorney. If something were to happen to them, who is it that they can identify to take care of their child, be able to make decisions on behalf of their child? So just putting in place those protective factors and those protective documents, and taking the time to have conversations and to plan and put some kind of plan together. And so a lot of our folks in our community may not have access and the ability to pay for that. So if you're an attorney, this is a great time, to step up and do some pro bono work and, give 10 or 15 or 20 hours of your time to be able to work with us to do that. And so that's just one aspect. Yesterday, I was on a call with an organization where they're preparing food and they're feeding people, like hot food, like cooking Haitian food, which, can be a lot of work. And so this woman is sort of like doing this with just a very, very skeletal crew. And so you could be in the kitchen, learning how to cook amazing, delicious Haitian food while you're being service, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so there's just a million different ways. So another reason to get in touch with Santla is because you are concerned and you want to get engaged.
Sure.
And you want to volunteer, or you want to offer some kind of assistance, some kind of resource. There's just a million different ways that people can get engaged. And so there's a lot of ways that you can volunteer as well, to be able to help us to build the informal infrastructure and the informal hubs that we're going to need to put in place in order to be able to respond to what's happening right now with our community as these needs are going to continue to emerge and escalate.
And I think also it feels scary, horrible, right? I feel nauseous and nervous about all this. But at the same time, here is an opportunity as a Christian community, as a Muslim community, as, a community of fellow immigrants to come together as we celebrated that day at the Haitian marketplace while we were dealing with the realities of TPS ending. We came together and people were chanting together that we would protect Haitians and others from this horrible consequence of bad policy. And we were coming together and praying together, and and reaching out to each other and explaining to people that we can be more than just separate communities, that we can help each other, that you can serve in the kitchen and make some Haitian food, that you could deliver some of the food, that you can see each other in church and pray together in these circumstances and provide support. So I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to reach out and connect. And again, if you would give your info, Santla is www.santla.org, and the phone number is
305-573-4871.
Fantastic.
And we're available. We have always been here for our community. We will always continue to be here for our community. We will always be a safety net and a safe space for our community. And we have, like I mentioned, just a number of different other organizations and partners who are working with us. If we can't provide something, we have someone that can. And so please, community, no matter how afraid you are and how much it feels like the right thing to do is to completely isolate. This is also a time to reach out. No, absolutely not.
And I want to thank community newspapers in South Miami. It is one of the most important beacons of hope and light and business in this community that has served, advertises, sends out newsletters, has breakfasts with all kinds of different people from all political persuasions. People come down here to speak and reach the community. You should come down here to learn how you can get your message heard and improve your business situation by bringing more customers to your place of business, and that you can come together as a community and really embrace our future together, that we can do something positive that's going to bring our community together to build the future that we can all be proud of, right? Absolutely. That is about immigrants. That's about people who care for each other, that love each other, want the community to thrive, right? And I look forward to the next opportunity to meet all of you and see you all. Thank you for joining us. And one last note, Peter Zalewski was not able to come. He had a prior commitment he had to deal with, but he was bragging to me about the last week's show, which I wasn't able to get to. And he's almost at 5,000 views for that show. 5,000. Now, who knows where that came from? I think they're actually transmitting and broadcasting this show now to jails. It's possible that there's some people there had no choice but to watch the show. But I want us to do better than that so that he can be embarrassed. So embarrassed he has to come back next week and complain. So please make sure you share the show, subscribe to community newspapers, join us